Hi, my name is Natalie Lakosil. I'm with Bradford Literary Agency, and I represent a broad spectrum of things, almost all genres of children's, from picture book, chapter book, middle grade, YA. I also do some adult projects as well, upmarket fiction, crime, cozy mystery, and nonfiction in both adult and children's as well.
And I'm Patricia Nelson. I'm with Marshall Lyon Literary Agency, and I represent middle grade, young adult, all genres in both of those, as well as romance and women's fiction on the adult side.
So we are going to try and get through as many of these pitches as we can today. We are doing this live with you guys, so we will be reading as we go. So these are genuine first impressions on these pitches. So this is basically kind of how you can see as an agent might respond and react seeing this pitch live in the inbox. And yeah, we'll give you the feedback as we go.
Okay, so this first one, my first impression is that I would love to see the pitch be a little bit voicier. This panic sparks at Greenpoint High when a devastating fire breaks out. It just feels a little flat as a first impression. So if you could infuse some of the voice from your writing in the pitch. I do think that structurally this is a good way to handle a pitch with 4 POVs, which is always a difficult thing to query. So I think that the overall outline works. I would just kind of jazz up the writing in the pitch a little bit. And the one of us is lying comp is great. That tells me exactly what this is right away.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I would also say I might actually lead with the bottom part, the kind of the hook here, because I got a little bit lost getting to the end, and I also do think it sounds a little bit too close to one of us is lying. So I'd actually love to see more what distinguishes this from that title, because we're not just looking for, oh, the next one of those. We're looking for something that has the same flavor but could stand wholly unique on its own. So this one seems like it follows a little too closely, both in format and how it's switching point of view, and in content. So I think you should work on how it stands alone as well. So this is one that started with the hook, which I think is great. Again, not required in a query, but sometimes it can be helpful to kind of get, the immediate impression that we're looking for, to know, like, is this something I'm interested or not?
Yeah, I think that this is strong as a query. It has a pretty clear, like, who, what's the conflict, what are the stakes, which is kind of the general query outline. I would say I would maybe like to know a little bit more about what's interesting about your characters. I don't know. I think that this is a well-written query, but something about it isn't totally grabbing me. And I'm wondering if it's just that there's not that quirky character detail that really grabs me and gets me interested in what's going to happen to these people.
I would say actually the language in this query could be streamlined for clarity. I think there's a lot of sentences here that are more complicated than they need to be. And it actually makes me think that perhaps this author may not have a good grasp of YA voice. Just give some example: conflagration, a rebuke reads bullying, and like just kind of things like that make like a gentle gardener. Like, it just the kind of the way things are described also sound not authentic YA voice to me. So I probably would have passed on taking a look at this one.
Yeah, same.
Okay,
so we have a middle grade here. This one is in a category of middle grade that, just like, for me personally, I kind of have a hard time with. It's like the wacky invention middle grade. I get what it is. I think that the query works on that level. I'd love to see some comps. There are lots of comps for this kind of book. But for me, it just is a little bit too, just a little too wacky for my personal taste.
I think this sounds like a lot of fun and the writing might be great, but I kind of agree. There's nothing about this query that's standing out that would differentiate it from, like Patricia mentioned, the other kind of wacky, techie kind of adventure, portal fantasy kind of middle grades. So for me, this one doesn't seem to have that hook that kind of makes it like, ooh, that's really cool and unique. So I don't know if that's, I would probably pass on looking at for that reason, but feedback for you, Querier, if there's a way to make it obvious why it stands out.
Oh, this is an example of a really great first sentence that actually that does grab me and tells me a lot about the character. I like the details you've chosen. Arrested van named Penny, trusty Fedora, and her partner Mad Dog, aka her dad. I have like a very clear picture of that person right away, which is something that I always find pulls me into queries. If I can just get that mental picture of the character. And snacks, of course, that's great too.
I think this sounds great. I actually agree. The first line also hooked me in. I think the voice here sounds great. I think you've made it clear why this is happening now in this character's life. And, I can only imagine how someone living that life before would fare confronted with takeout food and kale salads. So I think this was a great success, and I would have turned to the pages here. Oh, and also here's the rest of it. And I also was thinking supernatural when I was reading this, which was something that I was a fan of. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that this person did both like TV comps and book comps, which is something that I appreciate. If you're going to pull in a TV comp, I also like to see where you think it would fit in terms of books. This one to me, I'm not immediately seeing what makes it stand out from other similar kinds of books. This seems like kind of a conflict and a character we've seen in middle grade fantasy before. So I would probably pass on this just because I'm not right away seeing what's going to be super fresh and hooky about it.
You capped it to one of my titles, so hey.
Good to know your audience.
Although the problem when you do that is I'm thinking like, I don't see the similarity here at all. This sounds way more upper or high fantasy than Wolf of Cape Fen. But I agree. I actually was a little bit lost on the clear, like there was a lot going on in this query. We're switching kind of stakes and goals several times within the pitch itself. Like she wants to be an Illumin, then she's unleashes old magic, but then there's a power hungry noblewoman, but there's a god she needs to lure back to sleep, but he's got a bigger problem now arises, a vengeful sister. So there's just kind of a lot going on, and it wasn't really clear to me what the meat, the main meat of this story is about and what its hook is. So I think this is probably could be revised for clarity as well.
Mm-hmm. Natalie, I'm curious what you think about this. Something like I am sort of not sure fundamentally about like middle grade that centers on a kissing bet with like a boy who's trying to get all the girls to kiss him. Something about it just feels a little mismatch between the category and the story. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously middle graders kiss people, but like, I don't know. It feels a little, I don't know, it's squeaking me out a little bit. It's like a little too old as a premise for the age group the book's for.
yeah. I think that this is definitely an age when people are thinking about first kiss, whether or not it happens. Mine didn't happen at this age, but I was definitely a coming of age, and I think the way it sounds like it's handled in this query sounds more YA than middle grade. Especially the concept of a guy being confident enough to be like, well, I'm gonna, make some kind of experiment to like in a bet about kissing, like I feel like there'd be a lot more insecurity surrounding that. Also, a side note, I believe it's no longer called the scientific method.
Really?
Yeah, I think they changed it. I forget what it's called now, but I had a book that had to have a name change because the scientific method is no longer called that. Anyway, so that's random side. I'd look that up. Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, so I think it could be cute, but yeah, I would agree with you on the mismatched here. It definitely, I think the premise leans closer to YA than to middle grade.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily see it, this is awful. I don't necessarily see it not happen, that this kind of like survey could happen, but I don't know. Yeah.
It just feels so like it's his first kiss and he's already thinking about like getting the most kisses and thinking about it in this transactional way. Like, I don't know, not to be didactic, but there's like something about the takeaway of it that I don't feel totally comfortable with. Could just be
I guess
me.
I'm also not clear where you're also kind of mixing this light and fluffy concept with something that's actually quite serious, a girl who's trying to get to Costa Rica and her long lost mother, and her dad can barely pay the bills, and it kind of feels like this very serious situation is hinging on this very non like a kissing bet. Like, I don't know. It feels a little, that also feels like a mismatch to me. And I'm not also clear. Like, it almost makes me immediately dislike him that it's like, damn, just give her the money. Like, you need a bet, like, help a girl out. Like, let her get to Costa Rica for her money if you got the $300. Like, so I don't know. It immediately makes me a little bit dislike this guy too. I want to root for Apricot, and I'm not clear how the bet comes into play. Like, why would he bet with her specifically isn't clear either from this pitch.
Yeah. Another Veronica Mars comp. Love that. So I do love a Veronica Mars comp. I'm a huge Veronica Mars fan. This plot though is feeling a little young to me for what's working in YA mystery now. Like it's just very she's an amateur sleuth and she's looking into kind of these coincidences. I don't know. I feel like in YA, if it's gonna be a Veronica Mars mystery, somebody better be dead. I don't know though. What do you think, Natalie?
I would agree with that. I also had a personal problem with the idea that you could fix someone's depression by solving a problem. I think that's a misrepresentation of mental health. in the way that depression works. I understand the wanting to try and fix the situation to help, but it hit me in that way, and it rubbed me the wrong way there as well. Yeah, I would totally agree, though. It does seem more middle grade. The stakes don't seem life or death, as I would expect for YA in this kind of age group.
Okay, this is another one where like maybe rethink the first line, because it's just real off-putting, the idea that he thinks he's being stalked by his kindergarten teacher. I think you're going for like quirky, but it just makes me feel a little, again, icky. Like this adult is harassing this child. So that might just be a framing thing, like just the way you're phrasing it based on the second paragraph. I'm not sure it's a problem with the premise so much as just like maybe rethink the way that you're opening this up. Although I don't know. I'm not sure about the adult potential stalker of the child. Natalie, what do you think?
I would agree about the stalking comment. I think there's a different way that you can open it that still gets the humor you're looking for without the stalking element, which kind of hints at a much darker, inappropriate situation.
Yeah.
For example, like even just starting on the first day of 6th grade, Gabe is shocked Miss Thorne is his homeroom teacher. Like, I think even just cutting out that first 2 lines, like, I don't think you need those. So, yeah. I mean, because obviously that's the weird thing that's happening, that he's like, what? I just moved and you're still here?
Right. I also think that like actually these first 3 paragraphs and even maybe the beginning of the 4th, you might be able to sum them up in like one sentence about the kindergarten teacher reappearing, because as I get further into this query, it's like, oh, this is a Rick Riordan style portal fantasy. And it takes a long time to get to that in this query. That is not what the beginning of the query is cueing. So I would try to get there faster so that an agent who's skimming knows sooner like what genre this is and where we're going.
Yeah, I also think I think you could condense it a little, make it more snappier as well, which, it kind of wasn't. I might have turned the pages here because of the, again, it kind of sounds like fantasy adventure fun, but I think those first few pages would have really, really had to blow me away with voice, I will say, because the premise itself sounds a little like it might need some work. So.
Oh, our first picture book. I don't know anything about these. Natalie?
Okay, so length here is good, 462, that's fine. I think that I think that there isn't enough focus here on what this story is meant to be. Like you mentioned, kindergarten through 2nd grade, that's actually quite a big developmental gap in kids. And I think you can actually tell, like even from, a young girl changes through the years from the loving perspective of the family car. Who is this story for? Okay, is it for kids? Meaning, is this a book that you're wanting kids to love reading and their parents to want to read to them? Or is this a book for parents to want to read to their kids? Okay, so usually when you have kind of a nostalgic feel to a book, it's something you're targeting the parents, like, I Love You Forever, some kind of book where you're targeting, the parent who's feeling nostalgic about the growing up process, about a car, those kinds of things. But the content itself, given the age range you're mentioning, and I'm not sure though from that, even if you are targeting that, I'm not sure why as a parent I would want this? Like, why would I care what the car's perspective is and watching my kid go through the years? You know, the glossary of car terms and functions seems completely disconnected from the rest of the text. I guess I wouldn't have turned to this because I'm not really sure, like, why not from the perspective of a cat? Why a car? Like, what's unique and special about seeing this from the car's point of view? Like, why is this something that we'd want to, like, other than kids like cars, which is, you know, I think, yes, not, you know, why is it special to see from the car's point of view? Like, why not a car seat? I don't know. And also to adult is a very interesting timeline. Again, like I love
it sounds like the Giving Tree, but with a car.
Right. And, but why? Like,
right.
So I this one I think missed the mark for me personally.
This next one is another picture book, but I just have to say before Natalie starts saying smart things that I really love the idea of riding the wave of a resurgent interest in sea shanties. Is that happening? I hope so.
Sort of.
Amazing.
I think it's really tricky. I think it's not a bad thing to play on this moment we're having of the sea shanties, but I will say anytime you're trying to hit on a moment, you know, it's not, by the time, you know, picture books are going to take like 24 months to get published. So by the time this actually came out, the book would need to stand alone as outside of the sea shanty resurgence. So I think while that could attract an agent, if you see an agent is like into the sea shanties, be like, I saw you're into sea shanties. You love my sea shanty like picture book. Like, that's the hook there. And it's not necessarily a hook that it's going to appeal to the moment we're having, which will be long past when it's published. I
have so many questions about this sea shanty moment that I'm going to ask Natalie after this event. I want to know more.
Are you okay? We'll talk about sea shanties. However, as a parent, I can say the bath thing is surprisingly not something I have faced. My kids adore the bath. I don't know, but I know it is a common childhood thing. So it's not bad there. Obviously, just not everybody's going to have the same experience. I think I might take a look at this because it sounds fun. You know, the rollicking repetitive refrain, that sounds good to me. Young readers, 3 to 7, kind of a big gap there. I might say like 4 to 6. I also think your potential back matter, I'm not sure I see a strong connection there. It's not like a huge deal because obviously I could choose to pitch it with or without that. I think I would have to see. So basically, I think you did a good job in representing your book here. I think that I would just have to see it and see if it's reading, if the rhyme and all that is working, if, you know, or not. I will say there are a lot of I don't want to take a bath books out there. So I'm not sure like just a sea shanty angle would be enough to help this stand out. But I would have been willing to at least take a peek at it to see.
So this next one, just in terms of like general query framing, I have a pet peeve of people starting queries with theme. The story focuses on the power of friendship, the value of difference, and the way fear isolates us. That in itself, like those are all lovely themes and perfectly nice for middle grade, but theme is not going to be what makes me interested in your book. It's going to be character and story. So I would just cut out that sentence entirely. If you must include it, put it at the end. I don't think that's the way you want to introduce yourself.
I agree.
As for the story, I think that this, like, contemporary fantasy, middle grade fantasy for fans of Holly Black is like very much in my wheelhouse. I love that kind of thing. But I am having a little bit of a problem with the pitch here, in that I'm not totally clear what's special and different about this one from any other like spooky shadow creature Holly Black-esque middle grade. So this is another one where I would, if you are this author, think about how you can really focus on what is special and different and unique about your story.
I would cut the entire first paragraph, or move it completely under, because I think it's actually stronger knowing what the catalyst, problem, conflict is. That made a lot more sense to me. So I would just move that around completely. And maybe just move this part to the end and cut this sentence. Because I was also initially thinking, like, I didn't like it felt a little stereotypical, like we're heading into like bully territory, like the weird new boy at school, like the cliche, like it's like, why is he the weird new boy at school? Like, I don't know, it didn't feel like, anyway, it made a lot more sense when you read the actual pitch. So I would also probably, I'd also be curious about the author's connection to Australia. I think that sometime, it would depend how it's written, if it appeals to the US audience as well, I think. I think a private school setting, it sounds neat, but I don't know. I would have some questions here, so.
Yeah. The first sentence of this makes me giggle. So my understanding, I don't really do many chapter books. My understanding is that it's pretty hard to pitch an original chapter book or leveled reader idea, because a lot of those are in-house projects designed by the publisher. So I think that this has some cute elements. I'm not totally convinced it's enough to carry even a whole chapter book story, but maybe. But chapter books are hard, is kind of my big takeaway from that. So I do not take very many of them on, because they're just like a tough sell.
I work with a lot of chapter books, actually. Oddly, I'm not opposed to a good chapter book at all. I think that it just depends. There's definitely interest there's ongoing interest, especially in the school library market. But I would say I agree with Patricia's take here. I think that the key with the chapter book is the character that you have needs to carry a series. Sometimes there could be a chapter book series that's, thematically based, versus character based. But this one seems very specific to this dragon situation, and I'm not sure where I see this series going. And while kids do think farts are funny, it feels very message driven and very like, I don't know. It feels, I also don't, okay, I'm not sure how I feel about making fun of this real situation that Maisie is facing, and that she is an unlikable character, by channeling her embarrassment into attacking others. I am not sure. I mean, I understand it's meant to teach kids, which there in itself is a potential problem, although chapter books do have usually a lesson or a theme in them. You don't want it to be obvious. This feels obvious, meant to teach you about the consequences of being gluten intolerant and lactose and gluten intolerant. And yeah, I'm not sure I'm seeing where future books would go. Like, why would you pick up this book as the first in an exciting new series, which is key for chapter books because most of them sell either 2 to 4 at a time, some 6 at a time. So, think about that when also thinking about chapter books. Like, what's the series angle and hook here?
We went from farting to drooling. This is the body segment of this pitch session.
Okay, so whistling, I think, is definitely a frustration for a lot of kids. At least it is for my 6-year-old who thinks he whistles when he blows air, whatever. So I can see that this is something that it could be relatable to a kid who's struggling. I guess though the problem here for me is I'm not sure I understand what's at stake. Like, he wants to whistle, but why? Why does he want to whistle so badly? And why do I care if he is able to whistle or not? Like, I understand the progression of the plot here and what he's doing, but I'm not sure I'm invested in the outcome enough to want to read this. Why do I care if, walruses are wonderful whistlers except for Walter? Like, so, what happens if he doesn't succeed? He just doesn't whistle. And, so I don't know. I think that I'm not sure if that's a consequence of your story itself or if this is not clear in the pitch, but it doesn't invest me in the situation enough to want to turn to the pages.
My first question is, I like how the first sentence here just like goes for it. I always appreciate that in a query. But at some point in the first paragraph, at least, I would really like to know master of what, like I'm not totally situated in like what world this is and who this person whose murder kicks off the story is in relation to Snot. Why does she need to bind herself to a new master? I'm just not totally clear on the setup here.
I will say I like the idea that this is kind of a villain point of view. But the banter, at least if that seems apparent from this query, seems younger than like Snot generally as a name. Her angry, the way that she's presented seems, she feels young, I guess, and immature. So I'm not sure her point of view here is helping this feel YA. I
kind of get where you're going. Like, it has a little bit of like a Terry Pratchett vibe or something like that. Like these sort of like funny fantasy that definitely exist in adult and they definitely exist in middle grade. But I actually am not sure. I think Natalie's right. I'm not sure that kind of tone, like you might call it wacky fantasy. I'm not sure it exists in YA, at least not that I can really think of.
Which obviously doesn't mean that you can't do it. My favorite quote is, you can do anything you want as long as it's done well. We're questioning here whether or not it's done well, because I guess I'm not pulled in by this voice here. Both of these characters, like, while I like the idea of it being from a villain point of view, potentially misunderstood villain, I I don't like, from what I'm reading, I don't like any of these characters. They seem very, it seems like I'd be annoyed. Like if he's annoyed by this person and I'm annoyed by reading what she's read, and like, I don't know. So I would not have turned the pages here.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I'm also not sure why we want to root for him being the villain.
Yeah, just kind of needs more context in general for the query.
I understand. Like he said that he doesn't know how he ended up a villain, and the conflict is he has to choose to be a hero or a villain. Which, okay, that is compelling, but why would I be rooting for him to stay the villain? I guess so. Yeah, I'm. Yeah.
This book would certainly need to be own voices. I would certainly expect this to be written by a Black author. Otherwise, I think we're in problematic territory. I do like that this one includes protagonist poems and letters. I think that there's always a lot of interest for like mixed media, interesting format YA. I guess I wonder if the conflict is Kate realizes that if her identity is revealed, her friends will reject her. She'll be forced to attend a Black school and her family's reputation will be sullied forever. I worry that as set up, at least in this query, and maybe it's not true in the book, this seems to be a story where the problem is Blackness. And I am wary.
I would have passed on it. I mean, well, of course there's still a place and a need for any stories featuring Black characters. I'm personally more drawn to joy right now than stories about Black pain. And I kind of agree that the conflict here being that she's Black feels,
and she wants to hide it. She's Black and she wants to hide it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have also similarly not wanted to take a look at this one right now. I suppose this feels like a conversation that's a little out of touch with the conversations that we're actually having right now. Like it seems, yeah, that's what I'll say.
I agree. Okay, this next one does another thing that's a pet peeve of mine to start, which is starting by telling me like there's a market for your book. So the thing about agents is it's our job to know if there's a market for your book and like what's selling and what's working. So you don't need to start by telling me like track is interesting to people, because that's just not like for fiction. That's not what I'm looking for to make my decision.
I will say you're focusing a lot on character, and anytime I see a book that's yes, the 80s is historical, and I see a historical book, I'm immediately thinking why? Like, why are we setting this in the 80s? And there better be a compelling reason other than that's the time period the author grew up in and is comfortable writing about.
Yep, I agree. I agree, and I also think, it says in the last paragraph that this story is autobiographical or semi-autobiographical, and I totally understand the appeal of writing autobiographical and semi-autobiographical stories. And I actually have many authors on my list who their first novel does have some elements pulled from their life, right? Like I think that's very common for YA debut novels, because you have a lot of teen experiences that you're like funneling through and turning into your book. But this story feels too autobiographical. Like it doesn't really answer the question of why are we compelled by following this person's journey. It just kind of presents the journey as interesting in itself because he's a runner. And that is where the autobiographical thing, I think, can kind of hurt you, right? Like, of course, you think your story is interesting because it's your story. But I think that sometimes it can blind you from thinking about like, well, why would a teen want to read this story?
How is it relevant in their life today? Other than maybe having an interest in track or running, which I don't think would be a compelling enough reason. I mean, I think there's some, it sounds like a lot happened. And I guess it's just, again, like Patricia said, why are we reading about this moment, this character? And if it's, you don't feel like, I guess I'm also curious why you would choose to do a fictionalized version instead of a memoir. Like, I guess if you're not feeling like there's enough interest in your life as a memoir, why would a fictionalized version otherwise be of interest? Like, what's the hook on top of that? Like, so, yeah, I would have passed on taking a look at this one as well. Penguin Problems is one of my favorite picture books. So I think, you obviously are going to catch my attention if you're comping to that. However, I think that this one isn't standing out to me. Penguins Can't Fly. Like, I've seen this story before. Like, I've seen this played out in other narratives about penguins who can't fly, who wish they could. And it sounds like there might be some kind of innovative twist here, potentially, but I'm not sure this sounds like it has enough that would surprise me. So I probably would have passed on taking a look at this one. Like because any story about a penguin who can't fly, who wishes he could, is going to have to end up with some kind of way he figures out that he's really happy the way he is, right? So it feels kind of predictable in that way. So what's the surprise element here?
The first sentence of this pitch is like a little bit of tone whiplash for me. Like, cancer relapse. Oh, he's a clone. I think that, like, I don't know. That's a big hairpin turn to be putting in your first sentence. I don't know. I might not lead with the cancer. I might lead with the clone instead of the cancer.
I'm intrigued by this. I mean, I think this sounds like a really toxic mother-son relationship, and it's exploring some really darkly toxic things here, with the mother who's sort of like desperate, I hope I'm saying Munchausen syndrome, the one where it's like
Munchausen's by proxy.
Yes, that one where they're, it almost feels like that, like there's something very wrong with this mother. And so that intrigues me because I tend to like darker narratives. I would wonder if there's enough here to hold it, but I probably would have been intrigued to taking a look, but I would worry once you know the hook and that he's a clone, and, he has to sort of fight for his rights or lose his parents. It's kind of like, how long can you, like, it's 93,000 words, and I'm like, how much space can you take up with that, like, to compel you to keep reading all the way to the end without feeling like it's. So I'm basically here, I'm worried there's not enough here to sustain the narrative to keep me intrigued.
It
but
feels like it needs more teen stuff, right? Like Deke is the only teen in the pitch, and then everything is about his relationship to his parents. But usually for a YA, I mean, I love YA that has like a parent plot line, but I also want to see teens interact with other teens because I think that's what teens want to see. So it feels like there's a missing piece of this, which is like, what does Deke want outside of his parents? What is his life like? Who are his friends? Does he have a romance? Like, who is he interacting with besides this toxic family?
Yeah, and I mean, also on that, in that respect, you know, I'm thinking through the, like, what's at stake for if he loses this court battle. Like, that seems to be the kind of the big potential drama here. But, like, I mean, he might be dying of cancer, but he's dying anyway. But, you know, it's, if he loses, the stakes involve a different person, not him directly, I guess, if that makes sense. So I'm also not sure I see what's compelling me to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to know what happens to this court case, or, like, you know, else, you know? So I guess that's also a missing piece for me here.
Yeah. So for this one, the first thing that jumps out at me is how short it is. 54,000 words, or yes, 54,000 words for a YA. Tends to make me raise my eyebrows. I'm usually like expecting to see at least 60,000 words, 65. It's not a hard and fast rule, but when a YA is this short, I assume it's not going to have the character dynamics, the plot complexity, especially for a mystery, that YA readers are looking for.
Yeah, I got lost reading this. I have to go back and read. I would, if I was reading queries, I would have gotten lost. I think, you know, having this one big block of paragraph 2 isn't helping in terms of, like, sussing out what's the hook here. Like, there's a lot of things being thrown at me, like a widowed, befuddled minister.
Yeah, do we need to know
like
that much about the dad in the first sentence instead of about Scotia?
Like, I'm literally still trying to piece together what's going on here. So this is clearly not working well for me for some reason, not translating it. Like, it's okay, this teen is appearing in a docudrama as the role of the leading lady's double, and the town doesn't like the project. Why? And her father's sermonizing against it. Why? And then there are dead bodies on the set. And a 15-year-old town scandal. There's something missing here, okay? Because you've kind of got a bit of the murder mystery here, but I'm like, why is the town against this thing she's doing? Why is her dad against it? Is it linked to the dead bodies? Anyway, I can't really tell if you're trying to be, it's like a YA mystery, but I can't really tell. Anyway, all right. So I'm obviously, I had to read this several times to kind of get.
No, I'm with you. There's a lot happening. And again, a lot happening, especially given how short it is.
And you mentioned the book is unique because musical lyrics run through it. I hope not actual, because those would be quite expensive permissions wise. You don't want to deal with the headache of requesting permission for your book. So, but anyway.
Why does she fall for this boy at her performing arts school if he hates her? That's my first question. I love YA contemporary fantasy. I think the comps here are intriguing, but the plot itself, trying to think of the right word. Like, it just seems a little bit too straightforward almost. Like, okay, there are disembodied voices that lead her to a violin in the attic, and the violin has a written spell that tells her what will happen, and then the violin has like a manifests blue flame when she plays it. She keeps trying to play it. Like, I'm not sure why she needs to try to play it. I'm not sure. It something about it, like, this is a story that should be a me story, but something about it is just feeling a little bit too familiar, I think.
I agree. I really like the idea. I like that she's a gifted violinist and there's kind of this potential curse, but I feel like it stops when it should be going a step further. If that makes sense. Like, we know that the setup is intriguing here, like, she's miserable. She finds this violin that could promise to fulfill her heart's desires, and just like any magical promise story, like, there might be a curse involved. But what happens from that point, that is the twist. Like, that feels like the setup, and instead of like the big twist to keep you like maybe she actually does manage to play the violin, and then something happens and there's a huge something, her life is at stake, basically. So basically it feels like the story itself stops at the setup versus going further.
Yeah. Like, I mean, okay, so is she one of these witches in 18th century Italy? And then if she is, like, is the violin back because there's something she needs to do? Or is someone after her? Has someone else been reincarnated from the witch hunt? Like, that's exactly it, Natalie, is like, I just want something more exciting, bigger feeling.
Obviously, you're hearing us say a lot. We're looking for, when we're looking at a query, we're looking at, what's fresh and unique about a story, but we're also looking at, like, what's at stake. Like, what is the conflict? What is the problem? And what's at stake if they don't solve it? And all three of those pieces need to feel elevated to a level that I'm, like, invested. So it's not enough to just present a problem, right? It's not enough to just present a conflict or a problem. You need also the stakes that go with it. So.
My first question on this one is, can 12-year-olds really train to be pilots?
I don't know. I have a pilot friend that I could ask, though. I don't know the answer to that. We're going to assume for now that they can.
Okay. I mean, I think it's fun that she wants to be a pilot, and then she is inducted into this society that actually flies. I think that's a fun turn.
It's not clear to me how Nicole is tied into the immediate stakes of the novel, I guess. Like, the local weather is going haywire. 2 top flyers are hurt. Like, but there's still the society here. So it's not necessarily everything's riding on Nicole here to figure it out.
Right.
So maybe it does eventually in your book, but at least from the pitch here, it seems like if she doesn't get her confidence, is it really her fault if everybody, right. Is it really all up to her? Like, why is she the only one who can solve this thing here? And
I'm also confused what the mysteries and puzzles are from the last paragraph. Like, it's not clear to me where that piece fits in this story.
Yeah, the magical element seems a little buried. And it seems like that might be more part of a hook that's not being apparent. So yeah.
So this query feels like you're hiding things from me for reasons that are not clear. Like a dark curse from her mother's past is revealed. Her birthday wish is granted, but at a terrible cost. Like it sounds like that happens at the beginning of the story. So just tell me what the dark curse is and what the terrible cost is, because that's the interesting part. And the fact that I don't know that, I end up just kind of being confused for the rest of the query.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think there's more background here and not enough of the plot, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like I know this is more background about the character and setup versus like what the actual hook is.
Yeah. This is also on the long side for a debut middle grade fantasy. 71,500 words. That's on the next page. But again, like word count isn't everything, but if you're outside of sort of the standard range and you're a debut author, you might want to think about if, you know, has your story sort of spun, like in this case, has it gotten bigger than it needs to be? Like I actually wonder with this book if it's maybe starting in the wrong place, because the query seems to maybe be starting in the wrong place. So sometimes that's a tip off.
Yeah, I mean, usually this is in the ballpark, and I could, help obviously with edits, but it is worth noting it's on the longer side.
I think this is fun. I like the found family element, and I feel like there's an increasing interest in paranormal. Paranormal is coming back in YA. So I think that that there are interesting elements here. I actually got the most interested at like the idea of an astronomer who has nothing to do in a country without stars, and he says he dabbles in alchemy. Like, I love a good secret. So I'm intrigued by this one.
I actually felt it sounded a little young.
I can see that.
The idea of gangs and monster hunters and just like she needs no one. Like that feels a little, I don't know, for some reason it read a little young to me.
I don't know. I guess it depends on how it's executed. I'm also like a ride or die Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. So this kind of thing is like, oh, okay, I can see how this would work.
Yeah, I can see definitely having a Buffy feel.
Yeah.
When you said that, I got more interested. There you go, add that to your pitch. Okay, let's see how many we have left, because I believe we are at time here.
Oh, yeah. We have a lot left. We're not going to make it through all of these. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the people at the end. We talked too much. I got too obsessed with sea shanties and we lost who knows how many minutes.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna all these.
Okay, do you want to do two more, Natalie? And then call it?
Sure. Okay. do 2 more. Okay, let me refine the place here. Okay, right here. I mean, quick note, you shouldn't be querying when it's a work in progress, but you probably just submitted it for the sake of feedback. So I'm just gonna
pretend it's done.
Yeah.
I can't tell with this one. I would probably look at the pages. It does sound like it could be like creepy and haunting and atmospheric in an interesting way, and I always like all of those things. But it also does feel a little familiar. So this one is one that, like, I would just look at the pages and see if the voice resonated.
I agree. I think though, I would look at the voice on the pages as well. It is intriguing. But I am a little worried the same thing that you voiced, that maybe it's not elevated enough and as an idea that I like stand out enough.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any way. Yeah, I don't know if there's any, because this sounds like a pretty standard, even like horror novel, like horror setup, you know, like horror thriller setup, you know, the going to an isolated swampland, you know, there's a secret for the main character.
Yeah.
But I guess because there's so much that's familiar about this setup, it makes me worry if it would stand out.
Yeah. Okay, this one also has the standout problem. This feels like a very straightforward portal fantasy. There's a key and a door, and behind the door, she's special. And she has to decide between staying in the portal world or going back to the human world. That's like very well-trod territory. So again, like, I would encourage you to think about what is setting this apart, what's elevating it, as Natalie said. What's the extra thing that makes a reader have to read this portal fantasy instead of another one?
Yeah, I also think, like, just as if the conflict really is just whether or not she has to live in one world or another, it's kind of like, I'm not sure I'm invested in that. Like, I kind of want to know what else is going on, if there is anything else going on that are there life or death stakes? Like, what happens if she stays in the kingdom or goes in real, like, are there consequences of either one? Like, what, is there something going on in either one that would make me, you know, feel like I need to find out which choice she makes? Like, I'm not invested enough from this description to feel like I would need to read the pages and find out.
Yep. All right. Well, now we're 6 minutes over, so we really should stop. But we appreciate you all listening to us, and we really appreciate the people who submitted their pitches. I know that.
Thank you for your bravery in submitting for feedback, and, you know, hopefully even our feedback you've seen is incredibly subjective, and there are different things that are going to hit different agents, you know, in different ways. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight.
Yeah, that's why Natalie and I like to do these kind of events together, because even for us, like, different things hit us differently. We have different opinions, different preferences, different story elements or genres that draw us. And that's going to be true across the board with all of the agents you're querying. But yeah, we really do appreciate you putting your work out there for us to talk about and, you know, other people to learn from. That's very generous of you. So
yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.